out and come back in. They left, did they?
He'll be back.
I'll explain a lot of what that is steering committee.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and now that we're all on board, we have called the meeting to order, and can I have an approval of the agenda circulated, a motion? Thank you. Seconder? Right, second. Jackson, any questions on the agenda? No, with that, we will continue. Any conflicts to declare as a result of the agenda this afternoon? With no conflicts to declare, we'll move to the next item, which is the asset inventory update.
Just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the members. Just wanted to let everyone know that I've been in conversation with Gemtech. They did our first asset inventory, and we're looking at updating and populating that in areas where there were gaps. We know that there's been a significant amount of infrastructure added, changed, upgraded over the last year, a little more than a year since that was completed. And we would look at updating that as part of moving forward. That's also something that has been requested to keep it's legislated and it's in the guidelines as to our mandate on regional infrastructure and our sport, culture, and recreational infrastructure. But in terms of using that as a tool to attract business, healthcare professionals, tourism opportunities, it's a great tool. What we have to do is just kind of refine it. Now we're at a point where we can refine these things. Gemtech has that plotted all over the region. And we also have a person that leaves up until the end of the year that is capable of plotting that and making it very expansive. So they go down in the rural district, or they go down into the town of Oromocto, or Arcadia, or Central York, or Fredericton. I think I got everybody. You can go right down, plot, click, and it will take you right down to the asset. It shows you what it looks like, and it gives you some contact correspondence behind that. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's not a big ticket item. It's really an update to what we had. It'll take a little bit of a lift because there will be an email go out to the CAOs and the reps to help repopulate, just to make sure that everything is updated to the point where it needs to be. So, anyway.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll make one statement. I know, and I think I've said this before, keeping that inventory up to date, I think will be important. Anything we undertake, particularly if it becomes old and out of date, it's useless to have. And I would say number two, I would use specifically my community as an example. Last year being year zero of post government reform, we were all spinning our backs like Asian beetles. So we were unclear as to a lot of the things that we had to pull together, not because we were not organized, but we were under assault from bootstrapping, starting a new entity from scratch, and in particular working with local service districts and the information and good tally of the assets that came out of those previous government jurisdictions. That's just a statement. Any other comments?
I guess for me, to your point too, is it's always for this group to find a balance too, because recognizing that you may need a lot of help that I don't. I know Fredericton knows that too, but and hence I think one of the amendments they were trying to do through the budget process, which apparently isn't valid, but is just to try to help find that balance in respecting, that although we want to help everybody in the region be more successful, but at the same time, let's be diligent and specific as to what we want to use those accumulated funds for. So we're not simply propping Arcadia, for example, to do GIS, because I pay somebody to do that for me in Oromocto. But at the same time, coming to some type of a collective project that we see worth in, if you will. So hopefully those details will come of this asset map inventory, and we can get on with whatever the next step of that phase might be.
So that there's beneficial incomes that meets our values. Right?
Yeah, because obviously the concern is nobody wants to sit here and supply you GIS services because you don't have them. But at the same time, understanding that you don't. And as a big brother, I've got to help out sometimes, as long as whatever we're doing with that is collectively going in the route that we all see fit.
Well, Mr. Chair, just on that, and I take John's point, very, I understand that and where he's coming from. I just want to let you know, now the baseline stuff, this is a very easy lift. This is not any type of a big lift. Really, where it is to make sure that we're there as a region, so we don't have gaps when we're looking at it and anyone's left out, that type of thing. So, but it does benefit everybody. And I think you're right, John, sometimes we got to help one another out. And that was the whole idea of coming together as a region, right? So.
Okay, any other comments? We'll move to the Class C estimates for proposed aquatic center and thoughts through this.
So, Mr. Chair, thank you through you to the members. Just yesterday, the steering committee for the proposed aquatic center met, and we were presented with a new level of estimates. If you recall, originally we were looking at, we were using $60 million as an overall figure amount. In terms of looking at a calculator, in terms of to provide that information and help the communities understand what that impact would be to them. And so there's really two pieces to this, Mr. Chair, and I'll kind of jump down the agenda there, if you will. So as you can see in the new with the Class C estimates, that's the number in the middle column. The Class C estimates are up a fair bit. We've gone up to 74,295,000 and change on that. And so the steering committee yesterday in their deliberations asked for a meeting to be set up right away with the architectural team and design team to discuss the changes. What was it so much more? Why is it so much more from Class C to Class D to Class C? These are, I guess, commonplace in some bigger projects. I don't want to put John in the spot, but John sits on that committee as well. And so, John, correct me if I'm saying anything out of turn here. We've had, there was a very valid discussion. I mean, there was things in there that are naturally going to evolve as more information is known, such as on the mechanical systems. There was increases on that. Really on the construction side, when we were looking, there was a lot of equipment and internal things that were requested, and that a lot of that was derived of the stakeholder consultations that came out after consultations with the groups. And so we're meeting with the architectural and design team on Friday, and really everybody was concerned and conscientious around the cost escalation. And we're certainly going to be putting feet to the fire as to why. And in all fairness, a lot of that leadership on that particular comments came from the city representative as well. And then all of the members certainly were looking at that. Everybody, I guess, took someone to break the ice to say it, and then everybody kind of had the same questions and concerns. So I don't, overall, I mean, I don't want to go down into the meat and potatoes of this today. If we want, we can bring back the project managers and go down through a more robust, I just wanted to make you aware of where we're at today. And this was just fresh from the consultants as of yesterday. And if you can see, it's effective. I think it says in here as of October 21st. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chair, through you. I had mentioned this to John, I guess, earlier, that we all know where the vote stood. It was deemed non-regional. So my question to John was, what does it take to make it regional that's affordable to each municipality? Is this cut and dried on population and tax base, or can each municipality freely contribute what they figure their municipality can afford? And is there regulation in that, John? Was you going to look that up or find it?
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Director Duplessis and the members, in terms of that, I mean, technically, I guess the communities could come to an agreement if there was an opportunity to do so on a cost sharing mechanism. We tried that through the time discount factor, looking at range and a distance, obviously, well, distance and time, I've already stated that. Looking at it in terms of that, I think, we have the ability to look at an agreement as long as all parties are on board, to look at it. What, really the definition in the regional aspect is that everybody is contributing and everybody is a partner at the table. Now, at what level that is, well, that's something that could be discussed. So I don't know, Director Duplessis, if that answers your question. I see the Director doesn't say that.
Somewhat. I guess right now, the city of Fredericton is shut down for federal and provincial funding because we couldn't agree on regional, correct?
Yeah, that's my
Kate's shaking her
understanding.
head, so. Okay, let's just take arbitrary figures. Let's say Central York wanted to contribute $1,000. And all other communities want to contribute 1,000 plus. That would still give the city of Fredericton their federal and provincial funding, would it not? I believe.
It would be I'm sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, through you to the members. Technically, I guess if all communities were on board, there could be some discussion around that, but in terms of that, when you're looking at that, then that would be something that certainly the city of Fredericton would have to contemplate and would create a very heavy lift for the city. I think that was the idea of looking at this from a regional perspective, is to have a greater cost sharing. I think, and maybe I shouldn't say things I think, I'll say this. My understanding is that the province and the federal government are looking at places where they can invest their funding to areas in which all communities are collaborating in terms of that. So to your question, I guess there may be an opportunity to explore that further. To the other side of and I'm not paid to play devil's advocate, so, but it would, but stating the obvious would be a very heavy lift on the city as well.
And
Yes, I understand. Sorry.
Just to try to understand, I think I know exactly where you're going with this, because it's believed that unlocking federal and provincial dollars is contingent upon all regional municipalities participating in this. An amount that would be non-egregious to everyone to basically unlock that. I don't know whether it's a policy requirement or whatnot, would that make it work? So if every community gave, let's just pick $1,000, does that just unlock the next stage of funding? That's basically what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
I realize it's a heavier lift for the city, but right now the city is out 66%. Unless the other municipalities come in to some degree. And I just took that for an arbitrary figure. I'm sure some municipalities would come in much stronger. I'm sure Central York would. But at the end of the day, the city would have to charge the user fee accordingly, which is not a bad thing. We've all contributed. It's regional to what we can afford. And then we pay each person pays the user fee moving forward. And I got a feeling this might work, but I guess Kate would have to come to the bottom line and answer that, I guess. But I think it's workable if we kind of took that step to that degree.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the members. So I just want to kind of back up a little bit. I understand, Director Plessy, what you're saying on the funding. And, you know, everything was based on the premise of a third, and that's where the 66% comes from, right? And in terms of that, and, you know, right now we have to ensure that the other partners are at the table before, you know, in terms of being able to move forward. But from there, I'll let Director Rogers, Mr. Chair.
Director Rogers? Oh,
You're on mute.
Right. Well, first off, I want to thank David, Director Duplessis, for bringing forward, to me, that's the kind of creative solution finding we need to be looking at if we want to bring this across the line. I don't know. We have reached out to see if we could receive provincial and federal funding without it being deemed regional by the Regional Service Commission. We have not received a definitive response, but certainly every indication has been that that funding will be unlocked if it's a regional asset. But what defines regional, I don't know, nor do I know what the cost sharing mechanism, but presumably if we were able to develop, you know, that cost sharing mechanism that all of us on this committee worked on for so long, if that was going to be accepted, maybe another kind of cost sharing arrangement would also be accepted by the minister. So I like this idea of like, let's think outside the box. Let's figure out what level of contributions need to be made for it to be considered regional and move down that path. And I don't see why we have to wait on one for the other. Maybe that's something that communities could begin to explore. I have no idea how my council is going to respond to it, but I know that they were open to us not using the formula that was recommended by the province and us being creative and coming up with a formula. We were pretty adaptable when we were developing that formula. So I'm sure that there'd be a lot of openness to us figuring out something, definitely more than $1,000 a community. That I know, but how much, I don't know. And I think, why not explore it? I mean, we got to figure out if we really want this regional asset, we've got to get creative.
That was totally an arbitrary number.
thank you. Director Forsyth.
I just have a couple of questions. When did we start this? What year?
Would it be from a commission, pre-commission, it's been,
Yeah, it was started in 2022.
So the costs have gone up to almost 50%.
Well, the feasibility study
It
was
hasn't even been built.
oh, sorry, Director Forsyth, I apologize.
That's what I mean. I'm looking at the numbers here.
Yeah,
Being the numbers,
just during this time is what
just being
you're
the
asking.
numbers guy that I am. And it hasn't even, there hasn't been a high hope dig into the ground yet. So if we're up 50%, this is not the time. How much more is it gonna go up in the build? So that's another probably 25%, I would think.
Well, that number includes contingencies, so the hope would be that the contingency number that they've applied, which I think is somewhere around 12%.
Yeah, it's 8%.
They usually build a percentage in contingency, so the hope would be you'd end up there, but the reality is every time. Right now, if you're gonna project out, for every year you wait, you're probably adding at least 8% on the total number. That's just how it's working right now since COVID anyway.
So, which brings me to my next question. Has anybody looked at what it's gonna cost to retrofit Max Aiken Pool? And how much that cost would be versus building new? Just a question.
I think, Mr. Chair, if I could ask, Don, was that not a consideration under the feasibility or prior to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think that we have even a dated estimate of the retrofit cost. What we've known since 2008, when this first started, was that UNB has made a decision to exit the pool. And my understanding is they want that ground to deploy, to build a new physical asset, new building. So I'm not sure they'd even be amenable at any price.
So it's never been looked at though.
That, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
On
Just
paper.
in the land of dollars, that 74 to me, which I'm looking at right now, it's probably gonna be closer to 85, American, just in my gut feeling over the next 5 years. When it takes place, if it ever gets built. So I think we should look at all aspects of that. And even if UMB wants that piece of property, give them another piece of property and take it over. I mean, looking outside the box, that may be better off than put that much money into the ground.
I would say the fact is, we're hearing 8% year over year. I think conservative estimates as to increases, and kicking a can down the road becomes a big jug, which becomes a steel behemoth. So year over year, we've talked 2008, first kind of starlights were forming, 2022 with us, and now 2024 going into 2025. That's a lot of incremental increases in costs, and I think, to just personally speaking of as the mayor of Arcadia, holding any particular one group hostage from moving forward isn't good for anybody. So I think being creative is important, and coming to some conclusion, knowing that there are some things at play that are going to encourage the government to look this over again, the steps we've taken thus far. And that outcome of that may have us sitting back at the table looking at other options today collaboratively as a region. Some things where Director Duplessis has mentioned and Director Rogers has agreed, being creative. I think, this is not gone away, nor do we expect it to go away. I think a reasonable, desirable piece of infrastructure that the city of Fredericton is behind, and I think it's going to come to our table again.
Yeah, I would say to the effect that right now to keep us on track. I mean, we're talking about things we don't know. I'll be honest, we don't know if we can get provincial monies without federal monies. I have not seen the 66% model in about 3 years. Will it come back? I don't know. We just had an election last night. What's going to happen as a result of that may change provincial mindsets converse to what we did know here the last 4 years? I don't know. For today, I mean, all I can say is, in interest of time, it's certainly worth having a conversation at a future meeting, but I couldn't add any more relevant information today because, quite frankly, I don't know.
No, I completely understand that. What I would say is, Chair of the Regional Infrastructure Committee and member of the board, is again, you've heard me say many times about advocacy, a role that we play as board members in this commission, and we talked about the challenges of this affecting our own regional communities as part of post-reform New Brunswick. We did have an election last night. We know that this is looming decision-wise for one of our members that, certainly, in my opinion, would have regional benefit. We just have to keep pushing, frankly, to bring it to some conclusion, or we get 8% year over year. Well, that's not, conservatively, that's pretty scary to look at.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
to John's point. Yeah, this may require looking at various provincial funding pots, various federal funding pots. And John's correct. I mean, early on, if you recall, when we started talking about this in terms of this table, one of the caveats that we had in there is that it was contingent upon, you know, a third of the province and a third of the federal government being at the table. And those were premises based on the Canada Building Infrastructure Fund. And or the, you know, they used to call it the IBA. And you know, in terms of that, and I know that people are waiting to see if that's going to be recapitalized in a fall economic summit or statement. We have a new government. I think we got to kind of let the dust settle on that and see where what funding opportunities emerge from that.
But to Director Duplessis' point, is there an opportunity for this group to discuss it while that happens in terms of, you know, let's say philosophically, is there another way to consider this? Then I think that's an agenda item for a future meeting. It isn't today because I'm not prepared to speak to any of that intelligently today. But certainly I'd be prepared to consider other options that may be in lieu of waiting for, you know, governments to take handle of what does the next 4 years look like provincially, federally, all those things. I mean, I will say there is federal funding out there. I've been able to look into federal funding that's not attached to provincial funding. It's just not $74 million worth for sure. But there is funding streams out there. You know, but that being said, it's a fair conversation if the group feels that it needs to be proactive in waiting for a decision through the commission or what happens provincially in terms of funding and fiscal reform. Quite frankly, if I get an idea of what fiscal reform means to me as a community, it makes some in my decision making a lot easier, knowing that I don't have to put this on the backs of each property tax owner too, right? So all things I can't tell you today, and therefore it's hard to have an educated discussion today. But I take the points that everybody brings, you know, to the table, and I think it's something we can commit to a future meeting.
Yeah, I think it goes down to our board has spoken that one version of the equation didn't work.
Right.
So what's another version? Should it be for some of the things that we now are unknown elements to be placed in? Perhaps we can contribute to those.
Yeah.
I think that goes to, if we can move on to the next item, which is the updated calculator.
Yeah.
You know,
So
numerators and denominators may change. Oh, Director Duplessis.
Yes, the community building fund, is some of the funds from municipalities available for this? It's a new infrastructure.
Oh, he's probably talking about gas tax.
Yes.
Gas tax?
It's so
Yes.
Yeah, that one is
Yeah.
relatively wide open. The difficulty with funding is we all have to be careful about what we can all say stack and what we can't. So if you likened it to the federal government gonna give you money and then you're gonna turn around and suggest that that's your skin in the game, some of the programs, they won't allow you to do that. So but at the same time, the gas tax funding, or what we know as gas tax funding, is relatively open for things such as this, but I'm not sure that we could use it as our equivalent third of our money in lieu of whatever program comes along. And again, I don't know what that program is going to look like because they haven't renegotiated the newest version. So it is interesting. It will be interesting. And I think all we can do is be open-minded in whatever the future brings in terms of funding and bilateral agreements and all those things. Because again, I just don't know the answer.
Okay. One more question through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Probably directed to John Jackson. The university, they don't seem to have much skin in this game, and I'm wondering why, because we're spending all this money because they want to shut their pool down. Why is there no skin in the game except a little bit of land? Why aren't they contributing heavily?
I would say, and I mean, I certainly would direct it back to Fredericton, but I mean, they do see that land has market value. So there's several $1 million in market value of the land that Fredericton, or through UNB and Fredericton, but certainly the other point there is, you know, could they be a player at the table? Perhaps, again, it's part of that puzzle of trying to be open with all the players. I mean, obviously they're going to use this pool. So they would pay a rental fee of sorts, I would imagine. That's usually how that would work. But at the same time, there could be arrangements whereby they're paying into the capital, much the same. And I know Mayor Kate can elaborate, but with Grant Harvey and St. Thomas University, right? They put a certain amount of money into the capital construction costs so that they could have special dressing rooms and weight rooms and other things that are certainly can be negotiated through that process. And whether that's you know, regionally going to be through this committee or this group, I don't know, but therein lies sometimes the issue, and I'll be frank, is that these things are complex, and you get 14 mayors from across the community trying to make these decisions. I mean, I mean no disrespect, but it is complicated, and sometimes that's where, you know, this governance model doesn't always work for us in that sense. But you know, certainly there are folks like myself that are available. I know Steve Hart and Fredericton or whomever, if we can help share some of that knowledge and part it with the group of directors, and I'm glad to do so. But you know, I could go on for hours about complexities, but I won't. But it's you know, as to why they're not in directly involved, I think it's just how this process has evolved, and maybe it's inadvertent, and maybe it was on purpose. I'm not really sure. I'd redirect that to the city.
And I would say, let's move on if everybody's okay with that. So we'll move on to the updated calculator.
So, again, just, whereas, Gemtech was our consultant on, developing the calculator, the original one. I've, been in touch with them. We've got an updated version, that's, pretty much ready to go. If we would like, I can invite, Shahad and the team to come back, the Gemtech team to come back and, do a presentation to us. With respect to the latest numbers, we've looked at the legislated model, we looked at the Class D estimates, and now we're looking at the Class C estimates, so that you'll have that comparison in real time. And you'll be able to look right across to see what that would look like. Left the time and the time and distance factor in there, because I think most people had agreed that that was somewhat fair. And then we left the and then looked at cost in terms of the operational costs would be in there as well. So I don't know if that would be something that the committee would want to have maybe at the next meeting or something else, but we could certainly do that, or we could just send that out once we're ready to hit send on it. I don't know what the committee's thinking would be on that.
Any comments? One thing I would say, yeah, go ahead, Director Duplessis.
I have a comment. I personally, I think our municipality has heard all we want to hear from Gemtech. I think it didn't work before. I think we need to move on in a different direction, and that's why I brought the things up I brought up today. I don't need to hear Gemtech again. Sorry about that.
No, I could share the same. I mean, I'm aware I can manipulate the current model. I mean, all it is a bigger number, folks. That's what it really means. So if you need that number, that's great. I mean, I would just share it when you can share it. I don't really need to discuss my number amongst this group at this point.
Just making the offer.
I would say, you know, sharing it might not be a bad idea. It might help uplift other people, but in terms of leave it to us to decide, because yeah, I think where it's the board has spoken, you know, on this, and it's to Director Duplessis' point, we may need to look at things differently. And I know we have some other items to discuss today
Yeah.
too, though, from a process perspective.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? No, budget 2025.
Yeah, so. First, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm great.
Okay. Hope that just went down the wrong hole there as opposed to just,
Yeah, so I'm not so looking forward to that meeting.
But just wanted to, let everyone know that in terms of, budget, 2025, our budget meeting is Thursday evening. And which, the budget, for the Capital Region Service Commission will be discussed. Within that, there was the budget proposal that everyone had seen in terms of the, for this particular committee. And, anyway, I don't know if, hopefully we'll, have, support on that. And if not, whatever comes out of that budget meeting, we'll, may have to readjust, but, certainly in looking at, some of the things moving forward, it would put an extra, last year we had 20,000 set aside for sport, recreation, cultural infrastructure. And we know that we went over that by some, but we were able to compensate that. And then, you know, this year there was an additional 40,000 within that stream. So what we were really looking at there is to be able to do some of the things that some of the members have talked about, looking at that exploratory work, looking at bringing that in. One of them was talking about, you know, we had discussed about the potential trail project, or looking at trails, looking at plotting, mapping on that, and seeing what we could do on that side. So, anyway, I just wanted to make you aware that that's happening, and if you'd like to view in, it's you know, on Thursday evening at 6:30, and we'll be live on YouTube, and we're transparent in what we do. So,
Thank you. Comments? We had lots of those the other evening
yes.
for non-directors in the room. Moving on to other business, a related item.
Yes, so in your package there today, and I think Kelly can haul it up there as well. Just wanted to make everyone aware, we were copied on this, and I thank Director Rogers and her team for doing so. To keep us informed, you'll see that the letter had been sent to the chairperson of the Local Governance Commission. And the subject is the request to review the Capital Region Service Commission decision. So under that process, right at the moment, I've been contacted by the commission, and we are waiting for a letter from them to outline what they're looking for in the report from the Capital Region Service Commission, which will be, just so that you're aware, I mean, there are some pieces of this that are outlined in the legislation and regulation, in the act and the regulations. And that will certainly be minutes of the meetings, reports, things that we've seen, basically the materials. And if you remember the night that we handed out the booklets and sent everything out electronically, there'd be that and everything that happened afterwards. So it's really a, you know, the story of the decision that they'll look at in terms of that and how we got to that decision. So.
I have
I
a
don't
3-inch binder that I can share.
Well, we could produce that for you, no problem. You'll, and just so that you know, whatever we send, we'll make sure that every member is copied, including all the members of this committee. But certainly all the directors of the CRSC will be copied on that information. And we'll be as transparent as possible within that, and to ensure that everybody knows what that conversation looks like.
Any comments? More of an information item than anything. Process is acting as per the act. Okay. With that, anything else?
No, is there any further direction to staff? We've heard today about looking at potential funding options, federal provincial funding. And we'll do some exploratory work around what Director Forsyth said around looking to see if there ever was something on that, or if it's just a full-on decision. And staff will share the calculator that's been prepared with the members.
Can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Seconder?
Second,
Thank you. Great. All those in favor?
right.
None? Thank you, everyone online